Yeza here. Thanks for visiting my channel, and today I'm going to talk about the esoteric meaning of the Prophet Mohammed of Islam. The esoteric meaning of the Prophet of Islam. Now, you get the preliminary insights concerning the esoteric meaning when you study Sufism, because he has an entirely different title according to the Sufis, and he's looked at a more in-depth point of view from the Sufis. But even they do not unveil him entirely, because doing so would be a blasphemy against their position within Islam. But drawing off a couple of sources that I have, I'm going to show some connections and see where we go from there. So in the book called The Sufis by Idries Shah, Idries Shah was a pioneer in the taking of Sufism and presenting it in a manner in which it can be studied and practiced in a very in a modernized way that parallels modern psychology in a sense, but it's still more spiritually integrated. So whereas modern psychology is more clinical, more dry, and it looks at the roots of the conditions as some sort of irreparable or mysterious origin, Sufism has the insight as to where these conditions come from, and it has a more heart-based approach in healing them, as well as accessing higher levels of consciousness. So not only are you healing from your traumas, you're also accessing higher levels of consciousness in the process. So Idries Shah was a great writer, and he's from Afghanistan, and he's also a lecturer that you can check out any of his lectures on YouTube. If you're interested in this book, The Sufis by Idries Shah, you can either listen to the audiobook on YouTube, or you can find the book through other means. Now, on page 254, in a subsection called Mysteries of the West, the Head of Wisdom, Idries Shah states that the Knights Templar were persecuted for their worshipping of this head, which is called the Abu fi Hamad. Abu fi Hamad. And Abu fi Hamad is an Arabic word which means the father of wisdom. And it was supposed, it was alleged to be well, before I go there, this is where the word Baphomet is supposed to come from. And that word Baphomet is supposed to be a misinterpretation of Mahomet. Mohammed. Mahomet is how Muhammad's name is pronounced in Turkish. Mahomet. And this is very possible to be the case that this is an misinterpretation, being is that the Knights Templars, on numerous accounts written by historians and general occultists, agree that the source of their occult and magical doctrines, speaking of the Knights Templar, were from the Sufis or other groups of Moorish magicians, and particularly their receiving of the teachings and practices of sexual magic were received by various groups of Moors. Now, when we deal with the esoteric meaning of Muhammad, we might go to a very renowned Sufi named Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi. Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi. He is known as the Sheikh al-Akbar, which means the greatest of all masters, and highly venerated by all Sufis who came after him, especially Jalaluddin Mevlana Rumi, simply known as Rumi, the great mystical love poet, who is actually the highest selling poet in the West, ironically. And Ibn Arabi really honed in on the higher metaphysical teachings And he did it in such a way that's quite impressive as to have escaped martyrdom. It's quite impressive that he wasn't killed for his teachings, which were at times highly questionable as to if they originated within the doctrine of Islam. But he was very skilled in his study of the hadith, which are the traditional sayings of Muhammad that are equal in authority with the Quran, and which he was also very well versed in. So anytime he explained an esoteric interpretation of what the religionists, what the theologians would typically accept at face value, he was always able to go into the official documents and show the correlation. Okay, so Ibn Arabi had a concept called Insan al-Khamil. Insan al-Khamil meant the perfect man. And he says that Muhammad is the perfect man. And this concept of the perfect man comes originally from Gnosticism. And that really is the man who has unified all five elements. He has mastered his earth element, his air element, his water element, his fire element. And now he has accessed his Christ element, his spirit element, his Akashic element, his higher self, as it might be called. And this goes into some of the more secret aspects of Islam, because when you look at the name Allah in its English interpretation, you have 5 letters. And of course, that's the A, which is at the top of your head, the L, which is at your arm, the other L, which is at your first leg, the A at your other leg, and then the H at your other arm, which is the body of God, Allah. And Muhammad then really just becomes a symbol of the highest level of consciousness accessible through the mind of man. And so this concept of Baphomet and Mahomet, the father of understanding. What would be the father of understanding as far as a faculty is concerned? It would be the pineal gland, because the pineal and the pituitary gland, because these are the glands which deal with the perceiving of the inner with the perceiving of the internal levels of things. You know what I'm saying? So when we go further and look at why Muhammad's face is often shown with a veil. Muhammad's face is forbidden to be shown, according to the Islamic theologians. I found pictures of in the past of his face being shown, and I'm gonna have to look deeper into why his face was able to be shown back then and not now. But as of now, whenever you see a depiction of Muhammad, you get 2 things. You get 1, his face with a veil over it and a golden fiery halo around it. It's unlike the other halos of the Christian and Buddhist traditions, where it's more circular. His is more of a chaotic one. It's very beautiful. It has it looks like a flame, you understand, as opposed to a halo. And the other depictions of Muhammad are that of the actual like a calligraphy depiction. So it'll be the name Muhammad with calligraphy artwork and a symbol. But typically speaking, you'll see Muhammad, in prostration with a veil over his face. And that gives even much more evidence to the esoteric definition, because if it's non-permissible to depict Muhammad, it might be easier for one to gather that Muhammad is not really a physical thing, but a spiritual element, the Akashic principle, the prophet, the hidden prophet, which is the pineal gland. You know what I'm saying? The crown chakra. So, going further, Muhammad cannot be seen. He is, he's the last prophet. The last prophet. The last prophet. You know what I'm saying? And I believe there's 6 prophets before him. I think it's like Joseph, Jesus, Seth, Joseph, Jesus. I'm not saying this in the proper order, but I'm going to try to wing it. Joseph, Jesus, Seth, Elijah, Solomon, and I'm missing one more. I believe, because I have a book called The Fusus al-Hikam by Ibn Arabi. Is a book called The Bezels of Wisdom, or the Wisdom of the Prophets, and it came out in 1200 something. But it deals with all the prophets which precede, all the recognized prophets which precede Muhammad, and he's the last and 7th one. So it's always dealing with the chakras. It's always dealing with the concepts of the internal organs of light within the body of man, because this is the universal doctrine of spirituality. It's always dealing with definitions and descriptions of aspects within ourselves which have been mythologized and later theologicized, and then later religionized and dogmatized, and then it just all the way diluted into some mind control shit that is not even beneficial towards you attaining enlightenment anymore. So when we bring it back into its original form, it's the way I'm looking at it is from the perspective of the Abu fi Hamad, the father of understanding, and that once again is in the book The Sufis by Idries, Shah. So thanks for listening today. I'm going to do a part 2 on this in the near future, just to do it more justice. It'll be more extended, and I'm going to go into the origins as to why his face was once able to be shown and why it isn't anymore, and more also on the connection between Muhammad, the pineal gland, and the Christ element. Peace.